failure is a key learning device, right? Because if you're always hitting home runs, you're probably not trying hard enough.
It's a scary concept, I guess, to be a bit more malleable, flexible with IP.
One of the key challenges that I actually have is the work I'm doing is disrupting the traditional way of business.
I think we are seeing that next gen kind of consumers want to interact with brands and IP in different ways.
Sometimes there's a category like that where it's like, even if the scale isn't quite where we think it will be, we know we need to be there because that's where the fan of tomorrow is going to be consuming sports content. So I think, it's like part art, part science, and sometimes it is the data, but sometimes it just is a gut feeling. I think the other thing that I see brands getting wrong, specifically in gaming side, more directed, would be...
Hello everyone, welcome to the Speakeasy. This is a series that focuses on innovators within sports, entertainment and gaming. My name is Joe Condon, this is my co-host Jay Stewart, and today we're joined by Mitch Rasmussen, the Senior Director of Emerging Platforms at NASCAR. Mitch, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here, and thanks so much for having me. It's exciting to be back in London for the event, and it's great to be in this beautiful studio to chat with you both today.
So Mitch, maybe just for the uninitiated in the audience, what is NASCAR? And then maybe just a bit more background on, how you've got to be working there too.
Yeah, so NASCAR, or more officially known as the National Association for Stock Car Auto Racing, is the premier motorsports racing league in North America. We sanction over 1,500 different races every year, from the highest level of competition, which is the NASCAR Cup Series, all the way down to local short track grassroots racing all across the country. And additionally, we sanction races in, I believe it's 5 different countries. So we have a Canadian series, a Mexico series, a Brazilian series, and a Euro series. And I'm not sure when this is going to air, but we're actually bringing our flagship product, the NASCAR Cup Series, down to Mexico City this forthcoming weekend for our first official international points race. So we're the top dog in American motorsports, but we are a global brand, watchable in over 190 different countries, and broadcast in, I think it's like 25 plus languages. And we're all about going fast, being cool, and trying to be where the fans are, whether you've been watching for your whole life or whether you're a brand new fan just tuning in for the first time on Prime. So
all swagged up too.
All swagged up. Yeah, I had the privilege of being at Brands Hatch this weekend for the NASCAR Euro Series race. That was my first time seeing a Euro Series race, and it was American Speed Fest, I believe, and it was quite an amazing take to see a sort of a European take on American culture, and just loaded with tons of old classic cars and all sorts of different kinds of racing, from the Legends cars to some of the historic NASCAR cars they had out there. So it was a great time to be at Brands Hatch, turning right and left, not just turning left as we're usually known to do. It was tons of fun. And of course, I had to get swagged out for the podcast.
It'd be rude not to. Well, maybe because you've been at NASCAR for a couple of years.
It'll be 3 years in about a week.
Time flies.
Time flies when you're having fun.
But would love to kind of dive in a little bit more to how you got there, because I know there's a gaming background there too. And so would love the story.
Yeah, it's a bit of a windy road.
It's the best.
It's a very windy road. I actually in college I studied molecular biology and biochemistry, and kind of realized that lab life wasn't for me. So I pivoted into online marketing and realized that wasn't really exactly what I wanted to do. Working for agencies, doing social content and web content. Kind of spun out from there and found myself at a crossroads, and kind of thought to myself, what do I want to do when I grow up, so to speak? And I thought it'd be really cool to talk about video games at work. And it was from there that I landed in kind of the esports world, where I started at DreamHack doing business-to-business marketing for the American Festival product. Did a little stint at a big data company, helping esports rights holders understand who their fans are and monetize their fans. And then I found my way over to Faceit, where I ran the Rainbow Six Pro League in North America as a product manager. So the career into esports and gaming was quite windy, and upon reflecting on it, it's like every kind of step sort of informed my ability to kind of take this step into NASCAR, because all these pieces I've talked about, the marketing, the data, the product management, budget management, it all kind of feeds into the role I have today. And so the story starts there, but in 2022, we were planning the Rainbow Six Charlotte Major at the Charlotte Convention Center. And for those of you that don't know, the Charlotte Convention Center is attached to the NASCAR Hall of Fame, which is attached to the NASCAR Charlotte Uptown office. So a colleague, or now current colleague, but at the time a industry contact, she had recently joined NASCAR on the gaming team, and we had stayed in contact. And I think I asked her, I said, well, I have some empty floor space at my show, and you're NASCAR. Do you want to like wrap a car and put it on my show floor? Because I kind of need some content. And she's like, that's a great idea. Let's see what I can do. So, stayed in touch with that process, and kind of towards, we're getting about a month, 6 weeks away from the event. And I was just sort of felt like, I think maybe it's time to start thinking about what's next. And at the time, I didn't really think like, oh, I'm going to go join NASCAR, but it's more just opening my mind to the idea of what else is out there, right? I'd been spent 5 years in esports, and I was getting a little grinded out and just a little ready for something new. And I had a conversation with this colleague and just kind of asked her, how did you get your new job? What worked for you? Just kind of like, how are you thinking about it? And then at the end I said, well, if you hear of anything, would appreciate it if you keep me in mind. She said, well, I'm not sure if you're interested in like blockchains and cryptocurrency. Laughing like, of course you're not. I was like, oh, yes, actually,
let me tell you.
It's funny you should say this, right? And she said, well, we're hiring this role on our team. It's to focus, at that time, is to focus on Web3 specifically. And so I put my name in the hat and had some couple phone calls, and one thing led to another. And next thing you know, I was packing my bags and driving across the country, moving from Los Angeles to Charlotte, North Carolina, where I've been to this day.
Very cool.
What is it about NASCAR has been very innovative. And do you think that the capacity to innovate in NASCAR has something to do with the product itself, the ability to innovate? Or is it just the corporate sort of culture of NASCAR? Do you think that the NASCAR racing lends itself to innovation particularly?
Absolutely. One thing I didn't know about NASCAR before I joined was that NASCAR is just a constant hotbed of innovation. And in some ways, we are a technology company as much as we are a racing company. If you just look at the evolution of the on-track product, or the evolution of the actual cars we're racing, to the evolution of safety mechanisms, the safer barrier and keeping drivers safe, and all the way up to, how we do data analytics and kind of everything that goes into building a better, faster, safer race car is kind of woven into the fabric of the sport. We're also doing a lot with innovating around the schedule, right? So how do we take NASCAR to different markets? And if we're taking NASCAR to a new market, like racing on the streets of Chicago, how do we design the circuit? Well, another great innovation story, we worked with our friends at iRacing to actually develop the course in the simulator before we ever hit the track. So we could bring real drivers onto a sim and, how do you like this turn or that turn? We don't like this, let's change this. And so, you have months, if not years, of sort of work around figuring out what the circuit is before you even, break ground, so to speak. So there's a real focus internally around what can we do to think differently? How do you push the envelope? And I think that it's just part of the culture of the company. And it helps when not only is it kind of woven into the fabric, but the leadership at the top is kind of giving you that mandate and that cover and that directive to innovate and think differently. I'm lucky insofar as like my role is really about being a ranger, being on the front lines. And, we don't go into projects thinking, how do we turn $1 into 10? It's almost like, how do we spend $10 to learn something about where we might, make the next $20, 10 years from now. So my mandate really is to be on the cutting edge and to experiment, to try to push the envelope, and in some regards to fail, because I think failure is a key learning device, right? Because if you're always hitting home runs, you're you're probably not trying hard enough. You need to be hitting some singles and doubles, and you need to be flying out. And sometimes there are opportunities that just don't leave the starting line, right? Because it's just, you realize like this ain't it. So I think it's a combination of, yes, the leadership internally is pushing us to innovate, but when you look at the history of the sport, this isn't like new or novel. I guess, one other area you could point to is just how we're innovating with content distribution. So this year, at the start of our new media rights deal, we're now working with Amazon Prime as one of our new media rights partners. It's the first time NASCAR is being streamed on like a streaming first platform, and we're really excited about kind of the numbers and how things are going. So, there's always somewhere new to innovate in a 77-year-old company that is just born out of the southeast of America, and I just feel very blessed to be here and to play a part in that story.
Innovation's a journey, and I guess this, how do you decide between what is going to stay as kind of like a test or like a small win, and then how do you decide what kind of your big swings are going to be, and kind of what's that criteria internally that says, yes, we're going to double down on that and really start to shift it and integrate it, I guess, as part of the wider business?
Yeah, it's one of those things, I think, where there's not really sometimes there's not really a cut and dry answer.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just like, how cool would it be if, right?
It feels right.
So yeah, sometimes it really is like, this feels right. Like if I look at things like head-mounted displays and VR headsets, right? We know that that's a place we want to be in. We know that there are not a lot of these devices in the market yet. MetaQuest has probably the number one leading platform, something like 30 million headsets in market. Apple Vision Pro has got, a couple 100,000, whatever the number is. And you think to yourself, well, yeah, what's the penetration of, 30 million, but then how much of that's global and how much is US? And then you're like, the funnel gets pretty small, but you know that this is a form factor that is going to be here for a while and is going to evolve into things like glasses and different wearables. So sometimes there's a category like that where it's like, even if the scale isn't quite where we think it will be, we know we need to be there because that's where the fan of tomorrow is going to be consuming sports content. On the flip side, there are places to innovate where there is very clear scale and data that suggests like, yes, we started with a crawl, now we want to walk, and now we want to run. And so I think Roblox is sort of the other side of the coin of that example where kind of predating me joining the company, we did our sort of first test with an integration in Jailbreak, which is a big popular driving game. And then from there, we scaled up to, okay, well, the numbers were successful. Let's build our own experience. So we built NASCAR Speed Hub and experimented with a couple different drops. And then from there, it was like, well, let's scale this up even more. And then entering this year, we saw great success with, developing NASCAR Tycoon and running our own games. But we realized if we really want to be successful here and get the scale we're looking for, we're not game developers. Yeah. We don't building games is fun, but I don't wake up every day, thinking like, well, what are we going to do to get new players and keep the players? So it's like, wouldn't it make more sense to, instead of building our own game, to integrate with the most popular driving game on the platform, which is Driving Empire. And so that was a bit of a leap of faith, not only just from a pivoting on the approach, but also just from the, the cost and all that kind of stuff. But when you achieve 100 million visits in 100 days, in 3 months into a 12-month long arrangement, like that to me is like, okay, this was a bet that was worth taking, and that's an example where the data really does play out. And I think I think Roblox is obviously a place that most brands should be at. I don't think there's a question of, are the players there? It's the right demographic, but for us, it was about sort of going from small to medium to large to like larger, but in a slightly different way. And now the question becomes, okay, well, what's next, right? And I don't think I have a great answer for that yet, but we're really pleased with that. And so I think, it's like part art, part science, and sometimes it is the data, but sometimes it just is a gut feeling, and you just kind of have to trust your instincts and have that air cover. Yeah,
I guess you don't know till you try. And I guess if you never dip the toe, then you don't know what kind of presence works or what way, to actually, tweak, I guess. You've done integrations, you've done your own experiences, you've now done, a severely big numbers with Driving Empire. So I guess like for you, we all know where, consumer trends are going, and you mentioned around the stuff that you're doing with Meta as well. How much does that kind of tie into, that stuff's coming up over the hill, but how do you kind of prepare internally for that? And I guess, you said NASCAR 77 years of heritage there. How do you kind of balance heritage with innovation without kind of disrupting the traditional product that I guess, your core fan base loves and wants, while still creating an experience that kind of the next generation wants and expects to some degree?
Yeah, it's a tricky balance in some regards because our core traditional audience, they're very passionate about NASCAR. They love their sport, and they're highly opinionated online. So part of it is when you're innovating and when you're experimenting, sometimes you just have to literally it's about not reading the comments and kind of tuning out the noise, because it is important to know that we need to continue to push the envelope forward in order to progress the sport. We need to reach the next generation of fans. We need to get more diverse. We need to push into different markets. We need to show up culturally in unexpected ways. And if you're trying to be too traditional in your approach, that sometimes that can put blinders on you in some regards. However, when you are innovating on these new platforms, it is really important that the product you're building is not only native to a place like Roblox or Fortnite or a VR headset. It needs to be native to those environments, but it still needs to feel like NASCAR. It needs to look like NASCAR. Our audience expects to see Ford, Toyota, Chevy. They expect to see Goodyear on the tires. They expect to see brand partners integrated, and they expect to see race teams and their favorite drivers. So I think striking that balance of building an experience that is traditional in the sense, but is sort of non-traditional in sort of the form factor or the space it's showing up in is really important. And oftentimes it really comes down to is, we have all this willingness and desire as the league to do things, but our sport is so heavily dependent upon our partners. So usually it's not just about getting us on board. It's, if you want to do the Daytona 500 in MetaQuest and at Cosm, well, you need a great partner like Fox to come in and to help bless that and to thsupport that, because, they're the broadcaster partner in that event. So, if you want Goodyear on the cars and Roblox, they need to be on board. So we have a long history of trust with our brand partners, and it's kind of getting to the point where we bring these opportunities to certain ones, and it's like, yep, let's go. We trust you. But that's because we've been stacking wins, not just about this year, but for, 5 years prior. And I think building up that trust with your brand partners is really important, so that when you come with the next new wacky, crazy thing, it becomes a little bit easier of a sell, if you will. So
maybe we can talk around how you have integrated some of those partners into the experiences, because you've brought Goodyear into your Roblox experiences. You have done some stuff with Fox, with Cosm as well. What does that conversation look like? Maybe, like you said, there's a lot of trust there already, but I guess for them, maybe there's an education point where, you guys have been, at the coalface testing in these platforms, but it's still very new for them. So is there an education point where you need to go in and kind of show them, I guess, A, the numbers, B, what the long-term kind of view looks like, but C, how they can show up authentically in those spaces too?
Yeah, there's two examples that come to mind. One's a little bit more traditional, one's a little bit less. So on the less traditional side, this year we launched a new augmented reality module or concept inside of our NASCAR mobile app. So it's called NASCAR AR Masterclass. And the idea is it's small, bite-sized, snackable pieces of content which are presented in AR through a mobile device. So imagine on this table in front of us, you have a little model of a pit stall, and as you press play on your phone, the car comes in and you see the crew members jump over the wall and swap a tire and then and fill it up with gas, and it shoots off, right? So something like that, where AR isn't necessarily new, but for us it was important to we can't just have this race car show up that is a generic car, or is the tires aren't branded, or the Sunoco gas can is blank, right? So part of it was finding the key partners to bring along for the sort of the V1 experience. And oftentimes those are the really core native partners. So bringing something like that to Goodyear, to the OEMs, to Sunoco. It's just about having some really compelling visuals and like some really short, summary of what we're doing, why we're doing it. Obviously, letting them know like, hey, there's no cost here, right? We just want to make sure the sport is authentically represented. And you as a brand partner of ours, like we want to find ways to add value to your story, right? Because this helps our partners sort of, do their thing in the world. So a big part of that is working with our partner management team on just briefing them with the sort of the concept, and then leaning on them to work with the partners to kind of sell it through, and then just being communicative through the process. Kind of on the more traditional side, last year we had a really fun activation. We started building in Rocket Racing last year, which is Fortnite's native racing mode. And so when we were watching all this UEFN stuff happening, and we've been building games in Roblox, so it's like, well, we should be building games in Fortnite too, right? Of course. Why would I not want to do that? And there's a racing mode, so let's build racetracks, right? And we launched our first one, the Chicago Street Race. It was really fun, like one-to-one recreation of the Chicago course in Rocket Racing, and then we did a creative take on Daytona. But our third map of the year last year was Talladega, and again, we were just talking to our partner team and telling them about this track we had planned, and they thought, oh, that's interesting. I was just talking to our brand contacts over at Ally, and Ally's planning on some Fortnite thing around Talladega. So maybe there's an opportunity here to sort of connect the dots. So we got on a phone call with them, and they were like, well, we're doing this Talladega thing. I said, well, that's interesting because we're also doing a Talladega thing. So like, what are we doing? And eventually what spilled out was we ran a $10,000 Rocket Racing tournament that was presented by Ally. And so they handled a lot of the kind of the logistics and the tournament operations and some of the creator content. And then we handled building the map and integrating them into the map with native signage. So the map is sort of a walk through the history of Talladega. It's a 4-lap race, and you start in the 60s and you teleport into the 80s and the 90s and then the present day. And then as you go forward, the billboards, the brand placements, they sort of evolve over time. And it's just really a really fun collaborative effort to drive unexpected value for our partner and Ally and help them grow their Discord channel, while also giving us a way to amplify the efforts of this new map that we were launching. So sometimes it is just about serendipity of listening and just keeping the people aware. And sometimes it is about just willing something into existence. But again, by stacking these wins repeatedly, as we're talking to them about this year, what are we doing? It's like, oh, well, let's do that again. Like, how do we do that, but like different, right? Or similar. And I think those are the kinds of collaborations that really get me going.
On the gaming front, automotive sports and motorsports generally work extremely well as interactive entertainment. How has that progressed recently? I mean, have there been changes, or what do the innovations look like in terms of the games that you're doing and that you might be rolling out in the future?
Yeah. I mean, one of the challenges with gaming just broadly is there's just so much choice right now, right? There's just a million different things competing for everyone's attention. So that is a challenge, but I think it's also an opportunity. We have a very clear strategy on the gaming side around like, how do you build a game or an experience for all different types of players on all different places where they play. So everything from the most hardcore of the hardcore, which is like your simulator experiences, which is, our partners with iRacing, all the way down to the most low resolution casual thing you have, which is maybe more akin to like a Roblox, and kind of everything in between. So I think that's one point of innovation, is that traditionally, say 20 years ago, our gaming strategy was, well, we have a console game and we put our logo on it and that's it, right? Yeah. That's our strategy, is we do a new console game every year, and we did it. We solved gaming.
It was a very successful game.
Exactly. Very successful. And I think also akin to the market at the time, because that was just the way games were. But as the market has evolved to a lot more UGC-oriented games and mobile games and consoles and PC, you just have to be more relevant than ever in experimenting in more different spaces than previously. So it's about finding those native opportunities. It's about having something for every segment of your fan base. And importantly for us this year, in addition to, Roblox and Fortnite and the sim. It's also about how do we fix a bit of a hole in our map, if you will, which is the console game space. So we have a new simulation style console game coming out in, I don't know if it's public, later this year. I don't want to get in trouble. Very soon. It looks great. I actually play tested it recently. And man, it feels really good. It's being built by iRacing. So it has all the laser scanned assets. It has the physics and driving you would expect from iRacing. And it's going to have that polish that you would expect from a game that's being built by the people that built the best console games in NASCAR history. And you got people like Dale Earnhardt Jr. who are advising very closely. So we're excited to kind of bring this flagship product back to market, because admittedly the console space is one where we do have a bit of a gap. We've been filling that recently with activations in Forza, which we had a very successful stint with in Forza Motorsport. So successful that they made our playlist permanent indefinitely. It was like a 2-month long activation, and due to the numbers they saw, they're like, let's make this thing online indefinitely. So we've been filling the gap a little bit, but for us, like this new console game is one we're really focused on.
So in other words, the traditional, high quality experience console game is still something that you're very much invested in for the future.
Yeah, very, very invested. Like consoles are a very important way that people access games, right? Not everybody can afford a computer. And so, traditionally it's like, well, if you can't afford a computer, you're a console gamer. And if you're not a console gamer, then you're probably a mobile gamer, because mobile phones are very widely distributed. So consoles are incredibly important. And it's not just about making our own game, right? It's also how do we ensure our racetracks show up in other console games? How do we find other widely popular console games to insert our IP into?
So there's a licensing aspect to what you do with other partners.
Yeah, I mean,
with partners,
our entire business is bread and butter is licensing. So, and I think that's, I talk about innovation. Like one of the key challenges that I actually have is in my role is a lot of the work I'm doing is disrupting the traditional way of business. When you think about NFTs and Web3 specifically, right? Completely different way of thinking about ownership and financing and money. When you think about UGC games and giving the community control of your IP versus retaining control, like completely opposite. When you think about VR headsets, right? It's like, well, where's our $1 billion check? It's like, well, there's 30 million headsets. So this isn't really a where's my dollars. This is about how do we enable this so we can be present here. And maybe down the road, there's a media rights landscape where these rights become valuable. So a lot of the work is disrupting a traditional model. And I think the licensing model is so key and core to NASCAR that we definitely have to work in concert with all of our rights holders, because our IP landscape is incredibly fragmented. I've been told it's the only landscape that's more complex than ours is music, right? So if you've ever done any work with record labels and artists, like that's incredibly complex. We're like right there with them as far as how the rights landscape works. And so we just have to navigate that. And it's still an important revenue driver. So we just have to be mindful and try not to be too disruptive, but just a little disruptive.
It's a scary kind of concept, I guess, to be a bit more malleable, flexible with IP, but I think we are seeing that next gen kind of consumers want to interact with brands and IP in different ways. I'm intrigued around, how much of that thinking. I think it's a Two Circles report that said fandoms are built by 14. So, if you want to get in front of those audiences, then you need to be testing and trialing. But that does come with, as you say, the need to innovate in terms of the model, perhaps in terms of how you're working with IP or working with partners. And I guess the second part to that question is, how much of the thinking of being across all these different platforms where audiences are kind of fragmented now is about driving them back to the core product of the race at NASCAR. And I guess introducing, the brand and the IP to a new audience to then, bring them into your ecosystem a bit.
Yeah, I think that for us, obviously we want to get people to the racetrack, but we don't build experiences in Roblox or in Fortnite with, the explicit click here to buy tickets and we'll see you on Sunday, right? It is much more about how do you get these audiences to become aware of your brand, right? I think traditionally they say like you need to get in front of somebody 7 times with an ad message before they even remember who you are, right? So how do you get your 7 at bats with somebody when they have no idea who you are? And how do you plant that seed that NASCAR is fast, it's fun, it's cool, and it's everywhere where you want to experience reality, right? Because right now, consumers choose the version of reality they want to experience, whether that's in real life or behind a computer or in a VR headset. And our task is how do we remain relevant in all those spaces with the understanding that over time, players will become payers. So whether that's showing up at a racetrack or tuning into a broadcast or, I don't know, going to the NASCAR Hall of Fame or heck, even just starting to watch the race with their parents. It's about a very top of funnel view from our perspective. And we're convinced that if we can build that loyalty with these younger, more digitally native fan bases segments, they're going to eventually get interested and get hooked, right? And maybe they'll go to Netflix and watch Full Speed, or maybe they'll go to Amazon Prime and watch the new Earnhardt documentary, which was really amazing for someone like me who is not a native to the sport, but I obviously know who Dale Earnhardt is. And but watching that 4-part series really opened my eyes to like, okay, now I understand like who he is and why he was such a cultural phenomenon and such a powerhouse, and why his loss was so tragic and kind of gripped the nation 20 years ago. So it's really about kind of building that interest and then giving these fans lots of different outlets to go experience it. And then we would love to have as many of them as possible to come to the racetrack, but sometimes it's not feasible either, right? Because we race, the Cup Series races like 36 weekends a year all across America. So if you're not near a track, it can be challenging to get to a race. So it's not feasible. It's not like you have a baseball stadium with 82 games going on where you can just pop down. It's like, no, you're lucky if you get one, maybe twice in your market. And it's just about building that excitement and building that connection to the sport to get people to the track. And once they get to the track, it's pretty easy. It's unreal. Just, I'll never forget the first time you felt the cars turn left and go fast. It's like a visceral sensory overload, and it's just a lot of fun to be out there.
So maybe to kind of shift it on a little bit, what are the kind of stuff that you're getting excited about now? So from a kind of emerging platforms perspective or emerging technologies, what's something that you're working on that you think will be a big hit in the future, or something that most brands or IP owners will want to be looking at or should be looking at now?
I think the easy answer is AI. Just because of what's happening there. I think that's the easy, obvious, no-brainer answer. And don't get me wrong, I'm very excited about what's going on in AI world and agents and all this kind of automation and physical AI with robots and kind of where that side of the world is going. But the answer I'm drawn to is actually something I sort of touched on earlier, which is really like AR glasses really excite me. Glasses have been something that we've been fantasizing about for, since like the Google Glass era, all those, part of me wishes Google would have just kept going, right? Because how much further along would we have been? Yeah. But chips and compute and processing needed to catch up. But I think the natural evolution of the head-mounted display, the VR headset, into a form factor that looks like something that I'm wearing right now is obviously where the market's going. And all the players are investing dollars there, whether it's Meta, Apple's rumored to have been, Snap, Google with X-Reel that was announced recently. It's very clear to me that there's a lot of energy and momentum in this space. I think we need to be careful not to think that we're going to wake up January 2026 and everybody's going to have augmented reality glasses on their face and we're going to be in this future. Maybe that's 5, 7, 8, 10 years away. Traditional hype cycle stuff, right? But undoubtedly, I think that's the form factor things are converging to. And so we're starting to think about, okay, what does a AR glasses enabled experience at the racetrack look like? How do we pipe telemetry data into your glasses so when you're watching the race, you can have an overlay that shows you where your favorite driver is on the track and how fast they're going? How do we do wayfinding in glasses, right? I'm at the parking lot. I need to get to the fan zone. Boom. Okay. Turn right, go straight, turn left. Oh, by the way, here's 10% off, at the merch stand while you walk by. And we're taking steps towards that future now, experimenting in the mobile phone. So whether that's experimenting with AR telemetry type features where you hold your phone up to the track and see telemetry data or wayfinding, whether that's experimenting with different scanning kind of solutions. How do you get the data that powers these things? Or even that's just like making sure that we're building for platforms like Android XR and kind of the future operating systems that are going to underpin all this form factor. So for me, that's exciting, is the at-track AR fan experience, because we also believe that, when these younger fans show up to the racetrack, they're going to expect their AR glasses to work and have cool features. And if it doesn't, then they're gonna be like, well, okay, kind of wish it did, maybe I'd come back, right? So it's like, I think that's what I'm really excited about is glasses and seeing where that goes over the next kind of like 1 to 3 years specifically.
So how do you how do you experiment? How do you learn to be able to go forward with a technology and a consumer device that's not there yet? How do you actually make that progress internally?
Yeah, of course, the glasses don't exist, which is funny. But first part is the conviction of, well, we believe this is where the world is going. And it's not just me, it's my boss and his boss, and it's a bunch of people across the company. Like, yeah, this technology is interesting. It applies to the fan experience. It might apply to the in-car experience with the driver. Maybe we're talking like AR heads-up displays or other things. It could be at the at-home experience, right? What's the at-home AR glasses experience? I'm not sure. So part of it is a conviction of this is a technology in a space we want to play in. And then it's about having the right partners that can help enable your ability to build on these platforms. So we work with a XR agency called Trigger, and they're a very, very switched on shop, and they're in, they're plugged into all the hardware partners and the tech partners. So, they've got dev kits and stuff. So they're part of it is having the right partners that have access to things a little bit ahead of the curve, so you can start building and testing. And part of it is also about just sort of looking over the horizon and thinking, okay, if AR glasses are a thing, then there's going to need to be some data that underlays that. Well, if we don't have the glasses, can we maybe solve the data layer first so that when the glasses show up, then we have like a data set to plug into it, versus waiting for the hardware to show up and you're like, oh, we need this data. It's like, well, duh, like, of course, these glasses aren't going to, right? So there are, if you're smart and you sort of look over the horizon, you can kind of take a best guess as far as like, what do we think we maybe need to do? And you try to just sort of slowly walk that line. And I think the last thing I'll say is, I think it's just really important to just think 3 months out. There's no 12-month plan here. There's no 18-month plan. There's like a 3-month plan. And then at the end of 3 months, you sit back and say, okay, what's the next 3 months? Which allows you to be nimble and pivot and sort of react to what happens.
Because you mentioned that the actual product, the driving, the automobile aspect of it is helpful on the innovation front. So this would seem to be an area where maybe you mentioned it, the car element, the driver element, the teams would be interested in this sort of innovation as well.
Maybe, potentially. Maybe a bit over my skis on that one, right? But I don't think it's hard to imagine a world where, there's so much technology loaded into these race cars as it is. It's not hard for me to imagine a world where there's something else, right?
Right.
And so I think that's kind of that fine dance of, if you are innovating like in the car or in the cockpit, that is definitely not something I can just do, right?
Mitch is from Colorado, over my skis. He's from Colorado.
He's a great guy. But certainly, if there's a technology that can provide a competitive advantage or a benefit, then the teams are working on all sorts of stuff right now to find every little edge they can to be faster and better and I mean, we don't obviously know everything they're doing because they are sort of independent entities, and they're, they have their own secrets that they're keeping from all the other teams. Cause like, how do you go 1/10 of a second faster? It's like, I don't know. That's not my job. That's their job. But maybe there is some future facing tech that can help enable that. So yeah, I think the idea of AR under the helmet, or AR in the car, or AR and I don't know, maybe even in the garage when they're machining parts, or maybe it changes the way we do inspection. Like, I'm not really sure. Like, some of this is, sometimes you just sort of say things and see which ideas stick around.
When there's so many different technologies, platforms, products, etc., that you're exploring or have already got live, or the different parts of the business are working on, how do you make sure that, I guess, any of your innovation plays to some degree don't sit outside of the wider business? So, you have the main business here, and then you have an innovation bucket. How do you blend the two together without one being kind of left out to the side? Or is it that you want to have, freedom and autonomy here, and it doesn't disrupt it over there, and then once it hits a certain level, then you bring it in?
Yeah, it's definitely the latter on that one. There's a big advantage, I think, to having your innovation people outside of the core model, if you will, because there is a lot of freedom and flexibility in being able to run in a certain direction without knowing where it's going to go. We obviously have to be very mindful of, there are certain lines and rules and things we can't cross, right? So this isn't just like the Wild West, go do literally whatever you want. There is a large rope that, that you can take and run with. So part of it's about just knowing where are those kind of key lines and milestones. It's about keeping the people that are in the core of the business, the right folks, kind of abreast with, there's this new opportunity with this tech partner, and this is what we're thinking. Like, what don't I know, right? That's a phrase you use often, is like, hey, I don't know what I don't know, right? And not being able to approach a conversation with the mindset of, I don't know what I don't know, and here's this thing we're working on. What am I missing? And then, oh, you're missing this. It's like, okay, I'm missing that. We're going to change the plan. So you want to make sure that you're not completely out of left field. But you don't want the innovation to be basically encumbered by the way things are, right? Because the way things are great, but if all you do is the way things are now, you're never going to do things the way they should be done in the future. You could put that on a coffee mug or something.
Another thing for your licensing, huh?
Yes.
I guess, you guys are much, much further down the line than a lot of sports IP owners are, or brands, in terms of, approaching innovation. So I guess what have been some of the hurdles that you've seen that can perhaps, you could, part some knowledge onto other brands that are just beginning their innovation journey? So whether that's from how you're structuring the team, or how you're, finding out about these new technologies and exploring, what's perhaps been some of the ways or learnings that you found along the way that would be helpful?
Yeah, a couple things. So I think, first of all, from structuring the team, you need a real entrepreneurial mindset for some of these things, right? Because a lot of the times I'm very kind of top to bottom on some of these projects, right? So everything from the strategy, where are we going, find a vendor, okay, now we're going to do a contract, now we're in production, now we're going to launch something, now we got to do marketing. Like, finding people that are multifaceted and able to sort of fit across the stack, I think, is very important, because in innovation roles, you don't often know exactly what task needs to be done when you wake up every day, but you kind of have a vision you're working towards. So I think finding self-motivated entrepreneurial people, very important. And then internally having leadership buy-in and necessary budget to spend in order to bring some ideas to life. Obviously, it's not a bottomless pit, right? It's not a black hole of just, here's a blank check, whatever. But sometimes there is some question marks associated with spend. It's like, hey, we think this will work. We're not really sure, 50-50, and just making sure you have the right cover internally. And I think that just kind of speaks to leadership mindset is very important. I think the other thing that I see brands getting wrong, specifically in gaming side, more directed, would be just not showing up on the platforms in a native I don't like the word authentic, but a native and authentic way. If you're building a Roblox game, it needs to feel like Roblox. If you're building a Fortnite game, it needs to feel like Fortnite. Like, don't be afraid to put Peely in your trailer, right? You know, maybe he's in brand. I don't know how Banana is not brand safe, but you know, you need to be showing up on these platforms in a way that the people on the platform expect brands to show up in. If I think about our Discord server, discord.gg/NASCAR. Plug. I would argue the best Discord server in all of sports. We've recently started a new series of community events, which are essentially driver Q&As. So think you get a driver to join a voice channel, and whoever's online at that time or that day hops in, type in questions, and our moderators, you know, moderate the questions, and there you have an hour of basically unfettered access with whoever happens to be there. And you might think, oh, well, you're doing a Q&A for 100 people in Discord. It's like, yes, we are. And there's going to be some Q&As that are more well attended than others. But the point is, like, you're using this channel, which is Discord, dropping people into voice. You're building this really direct one-on-one connection. You can't do this on, I guess you could do like a Twitter space or something, but can't really do this in other mediums in the same way. And then if we're lucky, you know, maybe they stick around and play some games with people. I think we're not quite there yet. Would love to enable that, but I think that's kind of the thinking of, like, how do you take a channel? What are the people on the channel doing? What do they expect? What does it mean to be in Roblox? Well, maybe your logo is going to have to be blocky, right? Or we're doing Minecraft, right? Well, everything's blocky and kind of, you know, it's not going to be hyper realistic, right? It's like, oh, this is a simulator game. Well, let's make sure every corner and detail is like perfect. So just for brands, just find a way to figure out whatever platform makes sense strategically, whatever you're building, just make sure it feels like it fits in the fabric of the space, and probably find somebody on your team that actually plays that game or knows that community, and ask them, like, does this thing fit? Because the gamers, the people that are in those spaces can tell you pretty quickly, like, oh yeah, that's right. Or like, hey, you totally lost the plot here. You want to listen to those people internally.
It's playing to your strengths, isn't it? Like, even you were saying, integrating into a game is, you can understand kind of the dynamics a little bit more. You're not game developers, so it's better to leave people to do what they do best, and then bring your kind of tone and story to it as well. So, Mitch, amazing. I've really enjoyed having you on. Appreciate the time so much.
How about round two?
But I really appreciate you coming along. Thanks to everyone that listened along, and we'll be back for the next one.
Thank you, Mitch.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mitch.